We're coming to you live from the new Investor Tribe studio. Today's episode is brought to you by Kentucky Private Lending, KentuckyPL.com. Reach out to them today to start your investment journey. Now, Milton, we talk a lot about how real estate investing can be intimidating.
That is true, but we're here to help you skip the guesswork. I'm Milton Ali.
And I'm Hampton Scurlock.
And you're watching the Investor Tribe podcast. Man, new year, new times. And you get twice as much Hampton. Like, think about it.
Don't whisper, yell it from the rooftops.
That's
you get
right.
twice as much Hampton.
You get
double the Milton.
Double the Milton. You get double the Hampton and Milton. We got so much in store. This is what we call, and what Drew, our producer, calls season 2, right? So we're already we're already doing our thing. Like, it's amazing. Like, we're having so much success, and we want to thank the viewers. We want to thank everyone who supported us,
guests, family,
everybody.
Drew, Aaron, especially Aaron. He's not here today.
Especially, Aaron, but you know, so I mean, and we have the most amazing people on our podcast. Like, it's been a complete blast. And so now you can catch us twice. What does that mean by twice? You can reach us. You can also see us, right? On Monday and Thursdays at 9 a.m. So if you're in your commute, you can check us out. If you have a late commute, or if you're just on the road, or you can check us out, and you can go to YouTube. Please subscribe. Help us. You know, let's change the algorithm. Let's run up the hype, and let's go. I think it's time for
tell your friends.
Yes,
tag them. Anybody that's talked about becoming a real estate investor, or that is a real estate investor, or affiliated with real estate in any way. Tag them. Share
inspectors, real estate agents. Who else? Lenders,
property managers, appraisers, surveyors, insurance,
right.
Professionals, anybody and everybody that's related to real estate or real estate adjacent. We want to hear from them. We want to listen in. We may want to have them on the podcast.
That's right. And so you can reach us also at invtribe.com. That's invtribe.com. Did we get that right? So I think it's time for us to spin the wheel.
We're fortunate enough to have Elissa Withrow to do the spinning for us today.
Of course.
You want to give her a quick introduction?
Of course. So we have the CEO of Keller Williams Collective here with us. Now, she is an Investor Tribe contributor, and she is all around the queen of everything awesome. And so we are so excited to have you today. And we're going to get into a conversation a little bit later about how the market is doing. And you're going to give us the cap. And we also have a whole bunch of gotcha questions, because we watched the podcast when you were here last time. You made a series of predictions, and we're going to call you to account on each and every one of them.
Good. I can't wait, Milton.
Can you give us a good spin?
Absolutely.
All right.
What does it say here?
Investor Tribe giveaway.
Of course. So if you are on YouTube right now, go ahead and comment.
First. We need it first.
Oh my gosh. You remembered when you used to comment on YouTube videos and people put first?
Yes.
Like, that's just so wild. Like, I remember being like, oh, I'm the first comment. And so, yes, if you put in first, go ahead. We'll DM you. We'll send you a shirt or a hat or one
even
of the
a book.
Cool things.
Yes.
Or even a book. I mean, you let us know what you want. And I think we'll be in real good shape, and we're going to do our thing. So thank you so much for supporting us. And let's continue on. So, Elissa, welcome to the podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We've had you a few times. It is always great to have you in studio with us.
Always fun.
Excellent. And we wanted to get started right away with the market, with the state of the Louisville market. Mm-hmm. And can you give us a snapshot of what 2025 was like?
Sure. A snapshot of 2025 really and truly was stabilization. Okay. We moved from a very speed-based market over the past couple of years, and we wrapped it up with a bow to be in what we call a skill-based market. And why would you call it a skill-based market? Well, what that means is Inventory rose as we needed it to. The market is trending towards balanced, meaning it's not exactly a buyer's market, it's not exactly a seller's market. And what happens in that space is it forces sellers to market their property, to have their property ready, to price it properly. They're still moving, they're still happy, days on market are still reasonable. At the same time, buyers have a little bit more choice. They have some negotiability. So it's a breath of fresh air, and it's truly a stabilization that we needed, we expected, we created, and here it came in the end of 2025.
So it's interesting. Ryan Serhant recently went on CNBC and he talked about how it's not a buyer's market, it's not a seller's market, it's nobody's market. And I was like, yeah, okay, buddy. Really cool way to spin that. But don't we call that a balanced market?
We do. And I have not seen his statement, but I would challenge that because I feel like this has opened up opportunity, because up until the end of last year, we had a lot of people bottlenecked and waiting in the wings for several different reasons, buyers and sellers alike. So quite the contrary, I call this more of an opportunity market, not a nobody market in any way, not at all.
That does make sense. And so when you think about how many active listings year over year, let's kind of get into some numbers a little bit and just kind of walk us through what you're thinking. We were up about 14% overall. Some people go as high as 30%. It depends on how they count. However, inventory has increased significantly. And what would you posit as a rationale to that?
Well, right now in the Louisville area real estate market, there's almost 3,200 active listings as of this morning. That is a fluid and moving number at all times. But what we see is we saw a slow rise in active listings. And for the person that doesn't look at the market every single day, what in the world does 3,200 mean? Well, it means back in the summer and earlier in the year, we were looking at, 2,300, 2,200, 2,500. There was a time when we were under 1,000 at one incredible time during the pandemic. So rising up above 3,000, approaching the mid 3,000s, that is the inventory that we need for choice. At the same time, it's going to increase the days on market. What's important for the buyers and sellers of today to remember is that that's a very normal thing. It doesn't feel normal because it's different than what we've experienced, but it's rising inventory is what we need.
So more choice,
yes,
more available properties. They may sell a little slower, the return to normalization, the stabilization you talked about. And we're just referring to the Louisville market.
Correct. Yes.
Right now. And so we know that volume has gone up over 10% at about $5.5 billion.
Yes.
And can you speak to what's behind that number? Because there is a price increase and appreciation that's happening in our market.
Well, I think that there's a double-edged sword to that. First and foremost, we have been selling higher priced properties. The luxury market has not seen the slowdown that is traditionally marked by a shifting market. Reasons for that is people are cash heavy. This is the buyer population that's least affected by the rate environment that we're in. And that being said as well, prices are still increasing. The appreciation has decelerated. So in the pandemic, we saw 10+% appreciation in a property year over year. That's fun for a short time, but it is not sustainable. Now we have gone back to that 3-ish%, 4-ish%, which is really, really common for an overall stabilized Louisville area market. That is not representative of different cities throughout the nation, but if we're talking hyper-regionalized, 3% is very, very healthy appreciation.
Yeah, and that does make sense. And so I primarily operate as a real estate agent. In full disclosure, I am a member, and I align myself with Keller Williams Collective as an agent. And so it is what we have conversations offline about a lot is single family homes. We were just talking right before the pod about an experience as far as how the market is going, and what are you seeing as single family specifically? What trends are you seeing there
in terms of the listing
listing and sales
yes.
and just the overall experience. We were just talking about how, just to kind of put that together, we're talking about expectations that sellers are having versus the expectations that buyers are having.
Yes.
And since we're an investment show, we are talking about the overall market because we want to inform investors about how to engage the market. So we're speaking from a retail standpoint, but that determines valuation 100%. For investors. So we want to provide this information. So investors, don't think we're not talking about you because we are. And so could you speak to that?
Well, I think that in terms of expectations of buyers and sellers, it is and always has been a tale of two stories. Sellers always tend to live about a year or two in the past, because they've been watching the media, they've been watching the news, reading the newspaper, reading the internet, wherever their sources, and they start to live in the selling expectations that is now a lag measure technically in terms of how fast it sold, what price it sold, and what that experience was. Markets shifts. Markets are never stagnant. So by the time a seller tends to, and I'm generalizing, by the time a typical seller gets to the table, many times a professional has to help them understand what today's market is. And in that case, in today's seat at the kitchen table of the listing presentation, it is sellers. It's still a healthy market. You have not gone down in value. What you cannot expect is appreciation that is of the pandemic era and no longer that of the current stabilized market that we have. You can expect 3 to 4% year over year, and that's a fantastic, wonderful opportunity to be selling your house. It's also going to take you a little bit longer than it did back in pandemic. You're not going to sell on the first day, potentially, probably not in the first week if you do great. But the expectation is closer to 45, 46 days on market, depending upon the very hyper-local aspect of that, of course, we know as agents. And as a buyer, the expectation, we have to fight that a little bit too, because if you read a certain article, you're going to think that you're going to come in and over-negotiate. Do you have some negotiation power? Probably. You probably do. May not be as much as you think, though, because the market is still pretty strong and stabilized. From a buyer standpoint, from an investor buyer standpoint, the margin still might be kind of tight because it is strong. You do have to have a very separate strategy and approach to how you're going to find your margins and opportunity as an investor. They're still there. But as a whole, this stabilization has created a lot of opportunity on both sides.
And I've read somewhere that the average age of the home buyer in America now has gone up, and you're 40-ish, which surprised me. I thought it'd be younger. Do you know why that has gone up?
Absolutely, it's affordability.
Affordability.
The entry point that the new buyer population has been disproportionately disadvantaged. Because everything today, with inflation, things are more expensive. We're in an elevated compared to the pandemic. While it's a normal, typical interest rate historically, it's perceived, understandably, as elevated because mathematically, 6% is twice that of 3%. We can all agree. So the cost of money is more. We're still battling the student loan issue. We're buried in that debt. So we've got a debt to income issue. We've got an expense issue of inflation, and home prices haven't fallen backwards. They're staying strong. So that's the perfect storm of a delayed first-time home buyer entering the market, and I think that's a tragedy.
So I'm going to try not to change the subject that far. So I saw recently, and being the new year, I saw recently, and this is going to blow you guys away. So I'm glad you're sitting down, that they are now putting out 100-month car note terms.
I wish I could say I was surprised based on the 40-year mortgage offering.
Yeah, in the 50-year mortgage, right? So we're trying to, so they're literally trying, and they're saying that in 2026, the average car is going to cost $50,000.
So those of you without calculators or enough fingers or toes,
yeah,
that's 8 years and 4 months. So an 8-year, 4-month car note. We've had a hot take. We've talked a little more.
Yeah, we did talk about that. Yeah, we did. And so it's just insane. So it's one of those things where that contributes to the debt to income ratio that we're talking about. If you are not making wise priorities and decisions, then you can get caught up in that, and that will derail your home buying plans. And this is for the first time home buyer. which is averaging 40, and the average buyer is in the 50s, is in their mid 50s. In all the deals I did last year, the youngest client I had was like an investor that was 38. But my retail buyers, I didn't have one buyer under the age of 40 that was a retail buyer.
That's reflective of the average. There you go.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting. And so I wanted to move on and talk about areas of growth. And so we're seeing 3 areas that I'm seeing, and then maybe you can confirm or correct us here, is that I'm seeing Shelby County, I'm seeing Meade County, and I'm seeing Oldham County. And so those are 3 areas that are seeing significant growth. Like Shelby County seeing 24% sales growth year over year. Can you speak to that?
Well, that's where the development is going. One of our biggest issues that's contributing to this problem is our lack of new construction. We've been catching up from our lack of new home opportunities since 2010. I mean, since the Great Recession, a decade and a half ago at this point.
Wow.
We only caught up. They said about 3 years ago that new builds were no longer the problem. They were definitely part of the problem, though. I mean, we need 1 million new starts nationally a year. That is an incredible amount. Not to mention, guess who also is dealing with hardship? Builders. Land is more expensive. Products are more expensive.
Talent is more expensive.
Money's more expensive. Yeah.
They're having same problem, different walls in so many ways, and they've got to make up for it. However, in this Louisville area, Jefferson County is highly saturated. I mean, it still holds 2/3 of the overall sold volume, right? That being said, in terms of the development and the growth, that would only make sense that Oldham County and Shelby County and Meade County, these tract developers, that's where they can afford the pieces of land that's going to put up the new houses to be the development to drive it. Also, you have to think about industry. Industry is landing in more rural areas, which is going to bring the houses. It's going to bring the sales. Jefferson County just run that way.
And when I heard those counties, I'm thinking, well, I know 2 of the 3, maybe all 3 have been known to have good schools.
Yes,
so I don't know if that's a big factor. People fleeing from Louisville to get more land, maybe more affordability, possibly in their minds, better schools. I'm not knocking, JCPS, but there's people that for years, decades now, moved to Oldham County because the schools are, very well known.
And same with Shelby. Both of them. And yes, we won't be disparaging in any way, but there is something to be said when you can move into a county based on your address and have a very good understanding and level of predictability about the school that your children will attend. That's huge for parents and a big driver for growth.
Yes, it is. And so that suburban expansion is driving the growth in the Louisville area. And so I would like to see if you had any other observations about the market as we are going into 2026. And so as you're seeing the numbers, and where do you see things going?
Yes. So I love that question. And I do lead one of the largest brokerages in Louisville. And all that to say, I am so incredibly excited for the opportunities of 2026 for buyers, for sellers, and for the agents that represent them, because all signs are pointing in the direction of growth and sustainability and progress. And why do I say that? Well, we're seeing the inventory come on, which is hope for more buyers to have more opportunity. We still have a strong market, which motivates sellers, because we are still having to help sellers that need to move, that still have an interest rate that is less than 6%. That opportunity is out there. It's happening. It's available. Now, the mortgage rate is not expected to plummet. I don't make full-on predictions. It would be dangerous if I did. I always say that, I joke, but I'll forecast and bring thought and insight to the future.
Yeah, but hold on. So we're seeing inventory go up,
yes,
16%. How does your CEO of Keller Williams Collective, how are you guys, how are you guys helping sellers meet that and helping buyers understand the market as it stands right now?
Because we are incredibly stellar at educating our agents at the highest level. The more that you know, the better you're going to be. Our agents, they understand contracts and how to sell properties, but what they really understand is the market. And they know that they never make the market. We don't control the market. Nobody will ever. We don't control the market. But what we do know how to do is interpret it, because it's not if someone necessarily can buy or sell. People come to us because usually they have to. There's a pain, there's a need. So as a real estate professional, we have to understand how to do that with the path of least resistance and the most opportunity for the clients that we serve. We live in that space. We're excited to be in that space, to learn and grow and think differently every day so that we can respond to the market and be the absolute best resource for our clients.
And I was just thinking too, for the investors out there, it's important to find a good realtor, or, we talk about building your team. Right. Find a good realtor that can run comps for you, that can help you, sell those flips once you're done with them, can tell you what maybe is trending in building materials, colors, what are people doing for countertops, so you can maximize value given your geographic area, the price point. They're truly a invaluable resource. So I'm fortunate enough to host with Milton. I think we got a closing tomorrow.
We do.
Or coming in, more coming up soon.
Yeah, and so speaking to that, and we're seeing that while you're right about the balanced market. Recently, I put a home on the market, and traditionally we prepare for what is a quarter to a half mile around. And when you zoom out to a mile within almost any listing, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of choice, and there's a lot to pick from now. So there is a lot of options for the buyer at this very moment. I'm experiencing it, and we're having conversations weekly with our sellers about what's going on. It's not just you and your little house anymore. No. You have competition. How do you square up against your competition? Are you prepared to sell? And I am a seller, yet Mr. Seller, you are the seller. So how are you going to prepare your property in this way? Investors have to do the same thing. Investors have to prepare their property for sale or for rent, and they must compete. And I think for so long, you don't think you have to compete. No,
it was
right?
different.
It was different. You don't think you have to compete. You have to compete now.
For sure.
You have to show up, because there is some multifamily that's out here that can take your lunch if you're not careful. And the consumer is becoming way more cautious. They're becoming, we were talking about this, they're becoming way more meticulous.
They're incredibly meticulous. And they're
knowledgeable, and they've got more choices now. So
they do.
They can be a little bit pickier. They can wait. They can shop around. And they don't have to make the sacrifices they had to make in the market just a couple years ago.
They get to think through it. They get to protect their investment as they should, which is why sellers, you have to be ready to have you need to be marketable. You need to merchandise your property. It needs to look beautiful, but it has to deliver confidence. A buyer has to feel confident coming in. You need to obviously disclose properly and have your home maintained and ready, and to the best of your ability, shine it like a penny, because you are up against everybody, and you need to have somebody checking the market for you on a daily basis to see what's coming on, see what other prices that are making the buyers move, that are compelling offers, because there's more adjustments that are necessary. You're now needing a pilot that knows how to get from Louisville, Kentucky to San Diego, California, but a pilot doesn't sit back with their arms crossed sipping coffee. A pilot is making minute adjustments and watching all the inbound feedback at all times. A successful real estate agent does the exact same thing. They say, this happened on this property. This is the feedback we got. This is the number of showings. This is what a broker open feedback told me. We've got to consider all of that so that we can make the Meyer adjustment that's going to compel the offer to protect our seller's equity, because those buyers are coming, and they're going to come and they're going to bring really interesting conversation to get us all to the closing table.
So I want to hit you with this, okay? Yeah. So I want to. We didn't prepare you for this.
That's all right.
But I want you to. I want you.
And I've got a question.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
To your question.
Okay, go for it.
I think it's going to affect it. Do you happen to know any statistics as far as the housing inventory that's been lost to fire, or the city demolishing property. I see a lot of properties that look perfectly fine, and I drive down the street like, where'd that house go? And it was torn down. Could have been used for, housing, rental. So yes, because someone told me that there was more houses torn down than there was building permits or houses built in Jefferson County, and that may be leading to people to fleeing and the lack of affordable housing inventory or rentals. But I don't know if we can find those stats.
That's a great question. I would have to do research to answer that with accuracy. What I can tell you with a strong degree of confidence is that our fallout in homes that have been listed versus homes that have actually closed, that is on an increase. It's harder to get houses to the closing table. Now, that does not account for the fact that the house was demolished either by indemnification or what have you. That would be a really interesting thing to research.
Maybe for another episode, because I've wondered that.
Well, she's our contributor now, so we have our Investor Tribe economist here. So you're going to have to come back. I mean, that's just what this is. So
hold my feet to the fire.
Right. And so what I would like you to do is to put on your coach hat for a half a second. And how are you? And you sit in front of hundreds of agents, and I've seen some of those meetings. You sat with me recently. And so how are you preparing agents for 2026?
On one hand, we are not expecting, or we should not be expecting or even hoping for a significant drop, but a slight ease in the rate is going to put a lot of people in action, either by way of affordability or by I think this is Elissa's opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of psychology in even a very small rate. Right now, the rates are in the 6s for a typical. Obviously, there's lots of factors at play. Speak to your professional loan officer, but around the 6s for a 30-year mortgage, maybe in the 5s if you're securing a 15. But that's a huge consideration. That's going to be a really, really big factor. I also want people to kind of watch that inventory, watch the speed. There's a lot of it. I think there's a lot of hope if you are going to be participating in a real estate transaction this year, because it's going to be a really great time to transact. I think the trend is going to go up in terms of movement, in terms of solds, and it's still going to remain strong, but it's going to remain stabilized. So if you're somebody that needs to participate, go ahead. I think a bigger consideration is start the plan now. I hate to use a date because we're on a podcast. I'm going to do it. We're sitting here in January, if I may.
Oh, yes. Well, we're in January 2026 for you. Yes. So it's perfectly fine. Yes.
So what that means is watch. If you're somebody that is going to wait for the spring market, if you're an investor or going to be on the traditional retail market, the time to make plans is now, because, as we said earlier, this is a strategic, skill-based market. There needs to be a plan of attack. There needs to be a lot of expectations set. This is not a set it and forget it kind of space, but there's a lot of hope to be had on the other side. You just need to do it very smart, and you need to have the right people in your corner. So watch out for those that are the movers and the shakers and the one doing it. So that's going to be my third one. I think I want you to be well aware of the people who are doing it, because there is a perception that this is a, quote, bad market. And the data will tell you it's not. What bad market closes $5.3 billion in volume in a hyper-localized Louisville area? That tells me people are moving. So what you should know if you're going to participate is who's doing it, who understands it, and who's having success with it, because it's out there. And I think that's very exciting.
And those that are having success, buying or selling, what creative strategies have you seen to help sellers have their property stand out or get sold more expediently, or the flip side of that for buyers to get their offer accepted, and get to the finish line? So what concessions and what ideas or strategies have you seen work?
Well, let's start with the buyer side. And as if they're not a buyer who's competing, because I think that's a totally different conversation. I'm not going to bring that up because we're not seeing it as much today. In a traditional offer, the best thing a buyer can do is keep it as simple as possible and keep the margin of negotiation narrow, which is really counterintuitive to someone who may think that if they want to get something for $150, that they're going to start at $50,000 and land on $100. That's way too wide of a swath. It is your job as a buyer to deliver confidence to the seller that you are willing, able, and that you want to play fair. So if you want to negotiate a little bit, I always encourage my buyers to offer a little bit closer to what they're truly wanting. Narrow that gap, narrow the negotiation. You'll get there faster, and you'll have a happier seller and a win-win at the table, which is what a buyer wants. That's the buyer side. Seller side, if you want success, you price it well, you simplify it and neutralize it to the best of your ability, and you hire the best person to market your house across mediums and make it look the best it can be. The cleanest, the most approachable, and the best price for the value that it is. Price it as high as you can without going outside the market.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's amazing because what we're seeing in this market every day is that homes are selling for 98% of the sales price, right? So it just aligns with your point that homes are selling within 98% of the sales price. So the likelihood of you selling for full price is possible. We're seeing that.
It's just not the truest expectation across the board anymore.
Yes. And especially if you're overpricing, then you find yourself chasing the market. Mm-hmm. And so do you have any input for how we should look at the market right now? It's the first quarter. Just provide what activities should real estate investors, if you can give us 2 activities that real estate buyers and investors should be looking at right now.
The best activity that you can do as any buyer, whether you're buying your own personal property or investing, is you be a student of that market. You time block your space to understand what your buy box is or what your criteria list is if we're going to talk like a typical buyer. And you be willing to give it some time to have someone set you up on what I call a market watch that's feeding you the lifetime data of what's listing at what price point, how they're arriving on the market. But you need to understand and be a student of the activity, because by watching that, you're going to understand how to behave when you need to get what you want in this market. You've got to understand it. And if you don't have time to do it, you need to hire somebody that does.
Yeah, a lot of good information, and it is an interesting market. Mm-hmm. And you're right, no market is stagnant. No. And sometimes you get little variations, and sometimes there's a hot spot or a cold spot in a market because of a neighborhood or a location or government action or some outside or some influence. But so I really appreciate your time and expertise, all these facts, knowledge, data. It's good to hear it in real time. I mean, you got the numbers from this morning as far as the active listings. So
right, and so what we want to do, and one of the things that we're tracking here at the Investor Tribe, and what Ellissa is helping us out with is helping us understand that there is more supply. There is that hopefully that'll change into lower prices. That suburb is where the growth happens. As we kind of summarize today's talk, we know that single family still dominate around you, and those systems that you instilled, to what Elissa's point was earlier about how you show up, those things still matter, right? And then it's data driven. So we wanted to provide you with data, and we wanted to provide you with mindset and skills, and we want to give you, the investor, whether you're an agent, whether you're an investor, whether you're a lender, whether you're talent in any scope, we want to provide you with the tools necessary to make 2026 a phenomenal year. You can go to invtribe.com for more. I'm Milton Ali.
I'm Hampton Scurlock.
Skip the guesswork. Join the tribe.
The Investor Tribe podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not attorneys, financial advisors, or licensed tax professionals. The opinions and loss of principal. The Investor Tribe podcast is brought to you by the Investor Tribe, all rights reserved, featuring Hampton, Scurlock, and Milton Aldi. Executive producer Drew Cookenmaster. Produced and distributed by Bespoke Marketing.